Connolly.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, it's Dr. Connolly. And off in the margin here, we have Kristen, and we're doing this webinar for the first time, and we're live. So if somebody joins us, that'd be great. And if they don't join us, we're recording and we're moving forward. If you do join, if you see somebody join in, we'll have them make sure that their heads are live so that we can see them. And maybe you could put this so that where I can look over here and see if somebody's head comes on, right? I think that's how it works. But anyhow, this is the first webinar that we've done in a while, and it is called Raising Healthier Kids. If you were privy to it last month, we were getting ready to have the webinar, and about 3 hours before the webinar, we had an emergency with one of our kids. My daughter was on the playground and had an accident, and we posted it as Dr. Connolly has an emergency, and so the emergency was that, and we ended up in the emergency room, and she ended up with 3 stitches. And you know what? We're going to talk about raising healthier kids today in a very natural way. But let me tell you, we were very grateful for an emergency room and medical intervention, which we will talk about. So, I was born in 1965, and back in the day, my parents did what they thought were good for being good parents. And let me tell you, mom let me drink Kool-Aid, and I had processed bread because it was all she could afford. And there were all kinds of things that happened with me growing up, and I sort of share them a little bit when I talk about kids. But everybody always said to me, you can't really talk about kids until you're a parent. And my daughter will be 7 years old in July. And I'm going to talk about things tonight that give us a little bit of an awareness on a natural lifestyle. And I'm going to share with you some experiences and things that I know, things that I've learned as a practitioner for 31 years, being a largest natural healthcare practitioner in the world is chiropractic. And I am one. I've been one for 31 years. So let's dive into this. And if you're seeing this on recording, great. It will be posted. And I hope to raise some questions and learn some things. So what every parent needs to know. So slide number 1, brutal facts. Which nation spends more money on healthcare than any other nation? You got it, the United States. And, it's funny because when we get into that, we have the most elaborate healthcare system in the world, right? Well, who takes 75% of all the prescription drugs in the world? You got it, the United States. But takes up less than 5% of the population. That's the interesting part, right? Where does the U.S. rate in the healthiest nations, a rating by the World Health Organization? Now, they came up with 40 countries that basically are commercialized countries with healthcare systems and modernized countries. And the interesting part about this, where we ended up, where we are on this list. Give me a moment. We are 38. 38. It's pretty sad when you think of the fact that we're taking 75% of those drugs, and that this should be like interesting, right? What's he talking about? What the heck, right? So we could spend talking about the United States in general, but I want to move over and I want to talk about children, right? So in those that 38 out of 40, and what we're talking about are the overall child and well-being of the child. We have the economic upbringing, the educational upbringing, their healthcare system, family, and community. Okay. And when we get into this, when we talk about what we're talking about, where do our kids rank? Well, this is interesting. Okay. It's so crazy where our kids rank. Percentage of U.S. children with less than optimal health. The 7 to 23%. That means average of 16% of all children have less than optimal health. Okay. In fact, right now, in this current generation of children, and I think it comes under the number of school-age children, this generation of children will not live older than their parents. That's really scary. Now, Experts have concluded that medical care and genes actually play a relatively minor role with the influence of physical and social conditions in which children grow up. And I'll hit the Masha and Dasha conversation here in a few minutes, and you'll understand what I mean. Higher level of parents' education is a factor. Healthier behaviors by parents are factors, right? Well, the reality is, if we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. Okay. And I just gave you some staggering facts about the children's generation, where our culture is. So what if there's a better way, right? And we're going to talk about some basic premises when we talk about, how it is. And the biggest part is we need a better approach for managing our health, a better lens through which to view health, right? So when we're talking about this, we're going to talk about 5 key factors that make up this new lens and how we should view health. Number 1, you are designed to be healthy. Okay. What about my genes, doc? Well, there's 20,000 to 25,000 genes. What they have learned is that lifestyle, environmental decisions that we make trigger these genes. We all have genes for disease, but guess what, folks? We got genes for optimal health too. All everybody ever wants to focus on is where we're going from a medical perspective, right? Well, they're talking to you about medical perspective of genes related to disease. No one ever talks about the positive side of it. I could go nuts on the pandemic, and all due respects to what the pandemic was for our culture, our society. But what we were waiting on was the magic bullet, the vaccine, the pill. How's that working out for us? Did you see any commercials for vitamin D, vitamin A, N-acetylcholine, vitamin C? Did you see any commercials about oregano oil and how it worked antiviral? So when we talk about genes for disease, we also have genes for optimal health. What genes are you expressing? Are you expressing toxicity or deficiency? Well, we'll get into that, because toxicity and deficiency causes disease, and it expresses the negative genes. Ready? The body's intelligent. From the moment mom and dad got together, and it was probably several hours after mom and dad got together, two tiny cells got together, and 270 days later, you arrived. Breathing, pumping blood, digesting mother's milk, and basically everything about your body from the moment you became life. That intelligence never leaves you. Think about watching a child during their first year of life, how amazing every new milestone is. Did they lift their head up? Are they latching well with the breast? Are they crawling? What's their energy like? What are their sleeping patterns? It's funny. We talk about there's only a rare occasion where a child sleeps through the night early on. I wonder if they ever did a study on those children, what their health outcomes were like. Or a child that woke up often and cried and was never restful and peaceful. So we turn into adults, we seem to think our bodies are just broken and aging and wearing out. And we still have that intelligence in our bodies, and it never leaves us until we die. It's a big deal. It's called innate intelligence. Your nervous system is the master system, number 3, out of these 5 things that we talked about. All intelligence courses across the nervous system. You can see the picture of the doctor holding the spine there. There is no other practitioner in the world that focuses on this part other than a neurologist, and even they don't focus on what we focus on. Your spine is your lifeline. Your spine is your suit of armor, and it protects your nervous system. It's funny. You can't get a spinal replacement. We only get one. We take better care of our teeth than our spine sometimes. And this is important from the standpoint of children learning to brush their teeth. Do they learn about what they need to do with their spine? We're going to talk about what children live in nowadays and how it affects their body, right? Well, baby checks never check the spine. They always check the heart, the lungs, the digestion, and then they get shots, right? The spine acts as a suit of armor for our delicate nervous system, and the cranium acts as a helmet. What's your most important organ in your body? The brain. That's the most important organ in your body. Skull is the bony vault that protects that brain, and then the spinal cord comes off of that. We can't bend, twist, run, jump. All of those things happen, right? As a result of the intelligent design of our vertebral column and our cranial vault. Number 5, modern life is unnaturally stressful. Would everybody agree with me on that? Is it any wonder we have so much sickness, disease, sleeping problems? The world we live in, people are too sedentary. We are engineered for movement, and we've engineered movement out of our lives. We put food in our bodies that did not exist 100 years ago. Stress is up. Social stress is up. We've abandoned our natural design. Can we all agree that stress is up? Social stress, tech stress. I'm going to go nuts on this in a minute. Life. Is it going to get any better over time or anytime soon? So when we talk about this, what system in the body is responsible for processing, dealing, and coping with all this stress? The nerve system. You know, people say, oh man, this is getting on my nerves. They really do mean that. Our job as chiropractors is to make sure that you patients, not only do we remove interference, but make sure that you understand the nervous system controls and coordinates everything in your body. And when there's interference to that, it's dramatically impactful on the health of your body. Natural development, it all matters. Let's go back to kids. I'm going down a road there. When it comes to raising a healthy kid, everything matters. We tend to forget what we do before we conceive matters when it comes to raising healthy kids. For the sake of time, we can't dive into that presentation, but it's important. It's an entire topic on its own, preconception and the pregnancy part, right? But we'll briefly do it. If we want our kids to have the best shot at a healthy life, we need to be thinking about mom's nutrition before she conceives. And by the way, most women get that inherent nurturing ability that they take care of themselves better than they ever do in their lives when they're pregnant. I think it's the most amazing thing that a woman will naturally do. Okay. And she will. She'll take vitamins that she never took. She'll eat a balanced diet that she never eats because she's always thinking about that child that's growing inside of her belly. It's almost an inborn onboard process. It's just amazing what happens. I love taking care of pregnant women in the practice. Birth is arguably one of the most important factors when developing proper immune system. Most people don't realize this. Vaginal deliveries with little to no interference allow for the most beneficial exchange of flora between the mom and the baby. Everything living in that birth canal is all part of what's necessary for the baby to be exposed. It's crucial for the child to start building a strong immune system. If the baby doesn't receive the vaginal flora, it's recommended to get him or her on a pediatric probiotic as soon as possible. The breast is best when it comes to feeding our babies, both for the mom and the baby, believe it or not. Tons of stuff happens with breastfed babies. Of course, reducing the amount of toxins that the baby's exposed to will also help. And yes, that includes vaccines. Let the kids be kids. Stop sanitizing every single thing and being afraid to let them play and explore. They can't build up their immune systems if we never let them get exposed to any germs. This is the child who will eventually end up with allergies and asthma later in life. It is incredible. But actually, it's always funny to watch that mother with the first one. Everything's always antiseptic. By the third and fourth kid, that kid, the mom's like, it's like the commercial on TV where the mom's asking the mechanic with greasy hands to hold the baby while she gets something out of the car. All right, let's get back to the premise. The premise is healthy is normal. Remember that. And sick is abnormal. Yes, it's normal to be healthy, but you're designed to be healthy, right? So watch, your body's hardwired to heal and survive. Your immune system is a critical part of design. So you're born with an incredible operating system, software that has intelligence that's been passed down for thousands of generations from successful human beings from one to the next. It's truly remarkable what that intelligence is. But you're also designed to require exposure to some of the challenges in your environment to train and develop your immune system. So let's get into it. Unnatural development causes a problem. C-section, formula fed, over sanitizing, early antibiotics, vaccine. the hygiene hypothesis. It's all part of what we're dealing with. Unnatural development. By age 20, the average American child has received 17 courses of antibiotics. To top it off, most American-born babies are giving an antibiotic immediately following birth. This was a historical practice designed to protect the newborn from eye infections if the mother had gonorrhea, but it's now pretty regular practice regardless of the mother's STD status. So it's interesting how they do that. And, I'll joke about tetanus shots. Tetanus is found on a rusty nail in the pasture, usually right around where there was cow dung. Why, if somebody gets a dirty nail or a scraped nail, they put tetanus? I don't get it, because the only place tetanus lives is in cow dung. So it doesn't make sense to me. So it's so funny when we talk about antibiotics that were originally to guard against gonorrhea in females, but now it's just commonplace regardless of STDs or not. So we get into not only that, but the diversity of the microbial communities that didn't return to normal until approximately 2 years after the antibiotic course, right? This means that most children's gut flora do not have time to recover because 2 years is longer than the average time between the course of antibiotics. When I talk about 2 years, the first 2 years of a child's brain development, the first 2 years for a child is where most of the brain development happens. Okay, let's get back. 2/3 of children have already received antibiotics by the time they're 1 year old. A modern medical approach to child development. Okay, C-sections. C-section birth circumvents natural exposure to mother's normal bacterial flora. We talked about that. The natural struggle of vaginal delivery stimulates the immune system development. Formula fed. Among other critical benefits of nutrition, bonding and hormonal benefit to the mother's formula feedings is inferior option to breastfeeding, and with regards to the psychological communion between the mother and a child and passing on crucial immune system boosters. It's so incredibly amazing. But yet, did you hear about it? Nope. Wonder why. So when we get into the interference of medications and vaccines, this could be a whole workshop in itself. As I said, a child's immune system is designed to require regular battles with common germs and pathogens. It requires us to train and create a healthy and normal immune response. This is beneficial to the natural design for a child to develop a strong immune system for life. Basically, it's like being like a soldier going through basic training, right? This all happens in the first 2 years of a child when it's interfered with. So I'm going to basically tell you a story. We were in Mexico with my 10-month-old daughter, Harper. So now she's going to be 7 in July. So we're here now in April. So we got a couple months till she was 7. So she was 10 months old. And we were in Mexico, albeit Harper has not received any vaccines. She's never received a needle for anything in her life. So we're there, and she started getting sick, and she got a fever, and we watched the fever raise, and we were doing what we knew as far as lowering the body temperature. We would take her into the shower, we would put her in the bathtub, and it was funny. If it got above 102, she would lay down, and she just started walking. So it was crazy. She wanted to walk. She would never sit still, but if it got above 102, she would lay down. As soon as we got the temperature below 102, she would move around the room. And even though she looked kind of worn and dealing with being sick, she was active. But as soon as it went above 102, she would lay down. We watched the temperature, and we were giving her belladonna, things that we had with us that we knew, and they would lower it, but she kept climbing, and it kept climbing. It got to over 104 degrees. And at that point, I abandoned my ability because I was doing everything that I knew. I was adjusting her. We would adjust her, and her temperature would drop, and then it would spike back up. She was sick, so she was obviously fighting something. By the way, we called back home to our pediatrician's office. No one called us. There was a mistake in their answering service, and the doctor never called us till we were home. At the time, our practitioner had left the practice And when we got home, I spoke to her because we found out that she had left the practice. And when I told her the story about what we did at the hospital or in Mexico, when I told her that the Mexican doctor came into our hotel room and gave our daughter 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol, and her temperature went down. It went down dramatically. It dropped below 100. When I told her the story, she said to me, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, doc, no one gave us a call back." So I yelled at her and we got over that for a moment. I said, but at the second part of it, I said, I got scared, like many of my parents do. So I tell this story. She said to me, by the way, a DO, she's been practicing around 10 years. And she said to me, there are documented natural case studies that you don't hear about, right? Of where a child under the age of 2 has reached a temperature of 106 degrees and didn't get brain damage. She told me exactly what I was saying to you guys about the immune system needs to be strengthened, and it's not going to get strong if you're constantly knocking it down. She said to me, you had an amazing opportunity to allow her immune system to be stressed and to respond. And I was like, well, doc, I get it. Now I can tell you, we never gave her any medications ever again for a fever, and we definitely learned by it. And did she survive through all this? Of course she did. She's going to be 7 years old. And by the way, she's one of the smartest, brightest kids in her class, and she's doing great. Back to the workshop. So when we talk about the developmental interference that starts with a childhood illness, the acute phases of what's going on. Sorry, I hit the slide there for a second. When we talk about that, and let me get back to my place in my workshop here. I totally have my notes and I don't want to get off where I was. All right. So short-term acute childhood illnesses for chronic lifelong conditions like asthma and allergies, the rates of both of these have tracked upward significantly. And there was another seminar that I went to on immunology, and I was sitting there. And again, it was a natural seminar. It had chiropractors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, and naturopathic, osteopathic DOs. There weren't any MDs, and actually there were a couple MDs in the room. That were naturopathic doctors. And I digress with the slide for a second because asthma and allergies are on the rise. And there is a direct correlation between a child, again, before the age of 2, that is on Tylenol. They have actual studies that document children whose parents gave them chronic repeated doses of Tylenol, and they actually have asthma and allergy increases as a result of it. Did you get that study from your pediatrician? No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But it's out there. And there's a study. Was it supported by a pharmaceutical company? No, it wasn't. Certainly not by the makers of Tylenol, but it's there. Okay. And it's research. And you know where it gets it from? People that have children that are damaged through the overutilization of drugs. Okay. So the rates of these two types of conditions, asthma and allergies, are tracking upward significantly. So when we get into this and we start talking about all the other childhood illnesses that are tracking upwards, it's just, how do you think we're doing? Are we doing okay with the way we're doing this? By the way, my tone sometimes is bashing of the medical world, and I never want to come across like that. I get frustrated because people are swayed with the truth. They're not told the truth. And it's interesting, and it's not uncommon that a pediatrician won't talk about these things. So when we get into antibiotics and vaccination schedules, this is literally, in a nutshell, handicapping the normal immune system development. Okay. So the hygiene hypothesis. In short, we have become clean freaks. Over sanitation of the child's birth process, home environment, food sources has dramatically reduced the natural exposure to bacteria, viruses, molds, all of which are part of natural design. As a consequence, children are left with an untrained neuroimmune response and lack the critical normal flora that will serve and protect them for life. The immune system is a learning device. And at birth, it resembles a computer with hardware and software. Okay. And it's interesting, but few data. It's like every child, what you're visualizing them doing as an outward being, they're also doing as an inward being. It's the most amazing thing. Okay. And it happens through there's a lot more content here. It's funny. I will often say that when you see a kid with the runny nose running down into his mouth, he's ingesting the mucus that's being produced with his body, that's basically guarding all the impurities that are going in. And when he's ingesting the mucus, guess what? He's immunizing himself. It's an amazing thing what happens. 5 vital factors that affect immune function during the school year. Okay, so these are things that you want to get you. If you've looked at your children's health, by the way, we're going to talk about a healthy functioning nervous system. We're going to get into it at the bottom of the chart. You can see it. But when you talk about 5 factors, whenever I go to, I do the career day at the elementary schools. I used to do them every year. Post-pandemic, they haven't started them back up again. Maybe that'll happen this year. I would really love to get back to doing it. But I used to go to the 3rd graders and the 4th graders. And number one, dietary considerations, watching toxic and deficient diet, right? From that standpoint, sleep, not enough, right? Stress, too much. And sleeping, it's funny, I would ask the 4th graders how many hours a night they would get sleep. And on a consensus, it was 9 to 10 hours of sleep. It is amazing. Let me get back to my content. Okay, I'm going to move on. So posture. Understanding your posture is straight is healthy, left and right, but there's also the posture from a front to back perspective. And we'll talk about backpacks, but the one thing about backpacks, okay, backpacks need to be not more than 15%, maxing out 20% of the child. And then also movement or the lack of, and then vitamin D, stimulation and interaction, and then neurologic subluxation. So we'll get into this. Nutrition, toxic and deficient. Now, watch. When we get into talking about food and what we want to talk about, let me make sure I get my slide up here. Fruit bars and bottled juices are not cutting it as far as servings of fruits and vegetables. Our children need 6 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. By the way, what is a serving for a person? Put your hands together. That's a serving. Okay. So when you're thinking of a child serving, put their hands together. It's really easy. Child should have 6 to 8 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. More emphasis on vegetables because what we get into with too much fruit with high sugar, that's another issue. Okay. If you really want to start looking at it, you want to get as close to the 40 on the glycemic index where you're on average. It's not a bad thing to have grapes and bananas, but they're high in glycemic index. Okay. You want your kids generating new tissues and cells from foods like this, green foods. Anyone actually see that? If anyone sees actual vegetables or fruit here, besides our overcooked, besides overcooked nutrient void broccoli and a red apple that probably 1% of kids actually take a bite of, do you actually see what I see? Garbage. Okay, when you're looking at this picture, right? Let's see. Remember how I told you that there are 2 reasons we get sick? Toxic and deficient food choices all fall in line with that. So let me move on. So how can we help you? We all know that breakfast is actually supposed to be the most important meal of the day, right? So you want to make breakfast a priority. You want to make sure that it happens. Okay. And again, natural is better. An egg is not bad, but crunchy, Captain Crunch is not it. Pack their lunch. The more you have control over their food. Okay. So when we're talking about making sure that you're in charge, okay. When I made a joke about cereal, there's all kinds of studies out there about cereal fed children and what it does based on the sensitivities that they get from it. Okay. A lot of it is grain and a lot of it's based on gluten, and there's a lot to it. Okay. When they talk about lunch and they talk about leftovers meaning what you put on the dinner the night before, and hopefully you're doing it and cooking. Now, there's lots of new things out that since I've done these programs over the years, there's so many ways to have organic food delivered right to your door, folks. It's as easy as it ever was. Is it cheap? Nope, it's not. You can learn it. You can, make several trips to by the way, going to the grocery store once a week, not every 2 to 3, and buying bulk at Costco, it doesn't work like that. Okay. The more natural trips you go to the grocery store, the better. Do I need to say anything about soda here? Are you kidding me? I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia. We had Atlanta, Georgia, if you didn't know, that's where Coca-Cola originated. And there were several guys in my chiropractic class that actually worked for Coca-Cola. And I can tell you what used to happen to their shelves, where the metal shelves where the Coke and the sodas were, their shelves used to have to be replaced or coated and repainted because the acid from the sodas was destroying it. Paying attention to sugar is a big deal in today's world. Okay. Watching sugar intake. Okay. And it's pretty easy. Counting your grams of sugar and watching it and keeping it as low as you can is always important. Supplements. Ready? Did anybody hear during the pandemic that you're supposed to be doing a probiotic, taking vitamin D, taking fish oils, and a multivitamin? That should be a standard for every human being. Probiotics work to proliferate the intestinal tract. Vitamin D actually has been known to help in cancer reduction. Fish oils reduce the inflammatory process because guess what? They're exposed to so much crap in today's day and age. And then a multivitamin. You know why? The nutrients in food are just not what they used to be. It is just really a difficult thing. Okay. So there's some pictures of some stuff, right? And what you see there is smoothies with almonds. You see green foods. It's awfully hard to get green foods into your kids. It really is. Smoothies where you're mixing an apple or something to spice it up or something to make it sweeter usually is a great way to do it. So morning strategies, there's your smoothies again. You can add your protein powders. You can add protein sources, usually in the form of nuts. Movement, both before and after school. Trampoline, mattress, running, working out with the parents. Usually when you see kids that spend time with their parents that way, even just going for walks and nature hikes and trying to get out of the house, get away from technology, right? Laughing. There used to be a book called The Anatomy of an Illness, and it was a study. I don't know if you guys remember, I know my generation, probably anybody over the age of 40 remembers it, but the movie was called Patch Adams. And it was Robin Williams was in it, but he was a doctor in the late 60s, early 70s that learned very quickly that it wasn't the kidney patient in room 3. And what he ended up doing is he dressed up as a clown, and he actually had terminally diagnosed patients that he would show them Marx movies. Back in the day, Groucho Marx was the funniest guy. And they used to watch comedies, and they read poetry, and they spent time outdoors. And he actually had terminal patients get well. Children, we laugh. We actually talk about the belly laugh of a child and how it's so natural and how it's so wonderful to hear. It's actually very much a part of being healthy. It allows them to get rid of their worries and their stress. It's really emotional for me right now because post-pandemic, there are more kids with stress and anxiety than there ever have been in our time as mankind. It's incredible. And I don't know if maybe they just got exposed to too much of what was going on in the world, but it is what it is. Sleep is essential. We talked about it. And the biggest part about kids is kids need their sleep. And it's important to have a routine. Okay. They need their sleep. Children 3 to 5 years need 10 to 13 hours of sleep. It's amazing that in the course of a human being's life, we spend 1/3 of our life horizontal. Okay. So by the way, we always talk about the bedding and sleeping on your back or sleeping on your side, allowing a kid to fall asleep on the couch every night because you're not motivated or not on pattern or routine to get them to bed. No screen time. The process of putting a child to bed should be turn the TV off, go to the bedroom. It should be natural. Get rid of artificial light, right? Get rid of tablets and TVs and video games. It should be a process. It should be a story time. It should be a moment where their brains are allowed to calm down. Whether it's a song, which we did every night, or whether it's a prayer, if your family prays, or whether it's just I'm gonna have a great day tomorrow, mommy. I love you. It's so important to create that ritual, that affirmation of have a good night, mommy loves you. Have a good night, daddy loves you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Children 3 to 5 years, 10 to 13 hours. Children 6 to 12, 9 to 12 hours. My brother was a couch potato. In fact, that's where the couch potato stuffed animal came from, right? Teens, 13 to 18-year-olds, now you see it go the other way, 8 to 10 hours. And then there. Most video games are not calming. They're usually very aggressive, intense. It doesn't allow them to calm. Studies show that lack of sleep decreases our T cells and increases inflammatory cytokines. So when we get into this, by the way, more cytokines actually create more risk for cold and flu. I like to keep my workshops layman's rather than getting all kinds of terminology based. But the reality is the quality of sleep is such a huge thing in the immune system. The circadian rhythms of a dark room. Mommy, can I have my tablet up? I like to listen to music. Screen it, totally screen blank. Turn the screen on. You want music? I get it. I can understand all different children respond to different things like that. But there should be darkness and it should be consistent. Okay? Very important. And it allows the body to do so much. It's so funny. It says, did you know that overnight shift work is now classified as a class 2 carcinogen? In other words, people that work overnight and don't have the night and daytime routine, what they call the circadian rhythms, they actually have an increased episodes or incidence of cancer. Didn't think about that one, huh? It's amazing where our society has gone. Stress. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? So modern life is unnaturally stressful for children, right? Teachers, friends, sports, peer pressure of appearance, grades, schedule, popularity. It's true modern life is unnaturally stressful. Do teens have more stress now than we did when we were kids? I mean, it is so amazing what they deal with the social stress, tech stress. We need to be helping our children develop healthy habits when it comes to relieving our stress. We did a promotion in March for children and chiropractic, and we had 2 teenagers show up in the office with a forward head posture and early degeneration to their spine due to that forward head posture. It is so real, folks. Everybody that uses technology on a regular basis should be educated on the position of forward head posture. The pandemic created so much stress for people because of what they dealt with their structure. You think that sitting in those chairs at school are a great deal or good for the body? Heck no. Heck no. Over 2 million kids are on drugs for depression. 1.5 million kids are on drugs for anxiety. Can we all agree that children are over-medicated, that we're over-medicated as a society? Let's support other ways to cope with stress like nutrition and exercise and supplementation. And yes, we have natural herbal remedies in our office that are known to reduce stress. Why? Because I'm an anxiety person. I have been all my life, and I have never taken a medication for anxiety, but I use supplements in my office. Once again, this is where diet is also a big deal. It gets them more involved. And it also, by the way, getting your children more involved in sports, getting them more involved in activities, getting them more involved in recognizing things that they need to do helps them tremendously. You took my mouse. It's okay. No worries. Do you need it?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and take it. All right, I'm going to move on. Physical literacy, also known as movement, okay? It's a big deal. Children need to move. They're supposed to move first before they start learning. It's so interesting because it's basically what they call the spark from the relationship of movement and learning. When you move, you stimulate all the nerve cells that we use to think with. And when you stimulate those nerve cells, it gets them ready to do stuff. It's an amazing, interesting. The book is called Spark, the Revolutionary New Science of Exercise and Brain. And there are actually a lot of different school scenarios where they actually do movement and learning, especially with children that have learning disabilities. It is amazing. This particular author, Ratey, R-A-T-E-Y, has spent the past 30 years focusing on the attention systems of the brain. My recommendation is to get your kids moving. Disease harbors in stagnant tissues. It's such a big deal. In fact, osteoporosis may be related and caused by kids not developing peak bone mass in childhood. Can't tell you how many young women have osteopenia. And with that, there's a strong correlation between smoking and soft drinks. Exercise or not enough of it affects just about everything in a kid's day. How they sleep, their energy levels, their mood, and of course, their weight and physical health. It's funny. More teachers are incorporating some form of movement into the school day, especially as the research is pretty clear. Physical activity in school leads to better cognitive performance and fewer behavioral issues, not to mention cutting down on stress and anxiety. Groups such as the National Association for Physical Literacy tout the importance of teaching kids to move while they're young so that they will make movement part of their lives as they grow up. It's so amazing when I'm reading a paragraph of content that I want to share, but yet exercise is so much a part of what we need to do in our life. It's part of the rules for being a healthy human being. And the rule is strive for at least 60 minutes per day. You know, it's funny. I went to Disney World last month, and when I did it, I was running, and I typically will run 3 miles 2 days or 3 days a week. And the funny part about it is that I was doing that, and then we were at Disney, and I was getting 15,000 steps by lunchtime. And you know, for those of you that don't know me, I am an ex-elite distance runner, and 15,000 steps was a pretty normal thing. But it's amazing how when you just look at how often, and now we celebrate 10,000, by the way. So, and for people that sit all day, it is such a huge deal. Posture, the window to the spine, right? Somebody says, Doc, you know I got bad posture. I just want to fix my spine. No, it's a big deal. When we talk about children, right? Carrying heavy and properly loaded backpacks day after day, year after year can cause problems for your child today and in the future. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, in 2017, at least 7,800 kids were treated for backpack-related injuries. I can tell you that when I did this workshop, I used to do this workshop, it was in the late 90s. And at that point in time, there were at least 5,000 kids treated for backpack injuries. So here's my thought process. Again, not going in the right direction. So if you have a kiddo here, you look at the model, you can explain the point that what I'm getting at is no more than 10 to 15% of their body weight. It's a big deal. 2 shoulder straps, not one. Heavier items closer. When you carry the backpack high on the back, the heavier stuff will end up lower against the back. And then there is a waist strap on a lot of backpacks. You can use it. Kids tend to not want to use it, but high and tight. And it's a big deal. And they tell you to watch for shoulder marks on your kid's shoulder. And then they also tell you as parents to look at their, when they're little, moms tend to be in their child's backpack, right? Tech neck syndrome. I talked about this. It is amazing. By the way, lookupamerica.org is a website that's talking about this very much, and it's a great website. So check it out. Lookupamerica.org. Children and teens are especially at risk compared to their screen time and yours when you were a kid. Okay. I was born in the 60s, in the mid 60s. I'm in my 50s now, but I've looked at it. Anybody under the age of 40 has lived with some type of computer in their life, and they know no different. They call it digital dementia. It's a term coined by neuroscientist Manfred Spitzer to describe an overuse of digital technology resulting in the breakdown of cognitive abilities. So look up. It's a big deal. It's called Look Up America. It's really huge. And again, I could talk about forward head posture. What we get into with any spine is that the average human head weighs 12 pounds. When you are 1 inch forward, you're increasing the load of the head by up to 25%. So you're taking it from 12 pounds to 16 pounds. And then, you know, if you watch Big Bang, the TV show, Sheldon Cooper said, physics never lies. When we see teenage kids, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, where they have degeneration in their spine at that age, it's because in their lifetime, when they had the Apple tablet, because dad was watching the football game, and I'm guilty of it, folks. Okay. When we get into this, and we're going to talk about, okay, you might not be able to stop it, but the reality of it is that you got to figure out strategies to correct it. Usually a cervical pillow is a big deal, paying attention. Good time for posture break, right? YWTL, shoulder exercises. We teach these to our patients because it pulls their shoulders back. And when you pull your shoulders back, your head comes up. Your head doesn't go forward when your shoulders come back. So if you're paying attention to your shoulders, it's a big deal. Okay. We'll skip over this. Workshop can be done with live in live performance. What you'll see in this example from a side view is ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over knees with good postural alignment. Most common reasons children visit our office. The most common things: ear infections, asthma, constipation, bedwetting, headaches, leg cramps, wellness, and allergies and skin conditions. We've talked about some of them tonight. I have had experiences over the years with children with ear infections. It is dramatic. Folks, just because they have small little ear canals, that's not the reason that they get ear infections. The inflammation in the ear, based on nutritional considerations, based on the position of their heads, based on what's going on, you'd be surprised that a lot of children that have too much sugar actually have a chronic inflammation in their ears, which creates a blockage and doesn't allow for the ears to drain. When we start addressing the spinal issues in the top part of the head and neck, the first two vertebrae stimulate the eyes, ears, nose, and throat, and many children do very well with ear infections once they're under chiropractic. Asthma, it's basically breathing. Guess where breathing comes from? It starts in the neck. Again, forward head posture. Constipation, believe it or not, the nerves in the low back, constipation is often thought of as a side effect to back pain. And they don't really talk about it too much. But the reality is that when most chiropractic patients start getting adjusted, constipation goes away. Bedwetting is a neurology issue, and many children prior to the age of 10 do really well with bedwetting. Headaches, the number 3 condition treated in our office. And just like we talked about children with anxiety and stress, I had a child in the office just the other day, a 5-year-old, that said, well, you know, the normal headache. And he gets one 2 to 3 times a week. Leg cramps, that's the imbalance in the metabolics of the body. When we get into the magnesiums, the calciums, the sodiums, when you don't drink the right stuff and you have an imbalanced diet, cramping is a side effect. Wellness, I could spend a whole time. And then anything that creates inflammation, allergies, and skin conditions. So the Chiro Big Five, the body is self-healing and self-regulating. The nervous system is the master control system of the body. When there's interference to the nervous system, the body cannot heal properly and it can't regulate itself. Misalignments within the spine, subluxations as they're called, are correlated to create interferences within the nervous system. Chiropractors work to remove interference by adjusting the spine and removing subluxations. Subluxations are caused by joint misalignments, which then creates soft tissue damage, inflammation, nerve irritation, muscle spasm, loss of inhibition, meaning the body's ability to move fluid properly, joint fixation, tension, and then eventually degeneration, early degeneration. Microtraumas. The interesting part about the things that we talk about is kids fall, right? Kids bounce. I can tell you that in working on little children, when we talk about what causes subluxations, we already talked about birth. Bumps and falls. When a child's learning to walk, their low back is like a box of Cracker Jacks. I can tell you, when I adjust them, they're snapping and popping and moving all around. And by the way, it's not aggressive force put into a child's back when we're doing it, when we're doing children's adjustments. But it's amazing when they're learning to sit and crawl and walk. And then sports. Enough said. Accidents. Things do happen. I told you, my daughter was on a zip line, dropped down and knocked her head, hit her forehead right off the plate where the base of the zip line was, and ended up with 3 stitches. It's horrible. We don't, we don't know how it happened, and we obviously didn't think somebody wasn't doing their job or whatever, but kids do get and have things happen to them. I mean, look at this little girl here with a big old green egg on her head. Guess what happens when you have this though? Subluxations. I checked my daughter's neck that night. By the way, sleeping positions. Look at this kid falling asleep with his head tucked to his chest. Happens all the time. And then tech stress. Again, enough said. Is some of this, is all this making sense, folks? It's not rocket science. Okay, it really isn't. There she is. That's my girl. So I can tell you that the day she was born, I was there. I helped deliver her. I didn't plan on it that night, but the midwife basically said, "Do you want to catch her?" And I said, "Heck yeah, it's the best moment of my life." Anybody that ever gets the opportunity to be there for their birth and to participate in the birthing process is amazing. Meet baby Laurel, another chiropractic success. Good morning. Baby Laurel arrived yesterday, successful VBAC. For all you mothers that have had cesarean babies and you're getting ready to have another one, VBAC is called vaginal birth after cesarean. We are very successful with it. And it's usually because something ain't right with your pelvis that creates the issue. Because when we adjust mothers that are pregnant, which is a totally safe thing, it actually reduces the hard labor and it makes for a better pregnancy. So the next steps, if you're anything like me, you want the best healthy outcomes for your children. You do. I'm assuming that if you're paying attention to this, you're here for a reason to hopefully learn things about your children. When I recap this presentation and touch upon things that are important, immediately pay attention to your child's posture. Review and implement backpack guidelines. Make sure it's less than 20%. Real simple. The child weighs 30 pounds, 20% of 30 pounds. I mean, first of all, if a child's 30 pounds, they probably shouldn't be carrying a backpack. Let me fix something here. Usually it's when they're 50, 60 pounds, kids that are in kindergarten, first grade, and they're starting to carry it. It's very hard to keep it under 20%, but you're also not packing lots of books in there. Usually it's just folders and papers. When they get into their years or where they're 10, 11, 12, it is amazing what they pack in their backpacks. We got to pay attention to that. It's a big deal. Nutritional guidelines and supplements. You can do better. It really isn't that hard. Sleeping. Get into rituals. And if they're not, practice rituals. Talk to your children about the current scenario. Talk to them about the fact that last year in school, they missed 6 days of school. Give them a goal that maybe they need to try and miss less school. When kids are sick, they're not in school. It's not good for them. It's not good for their development. And then most importantly, get your spine checked. This slide right here has the QR code on step 1 for you to go right to that QR code. Take your phone, put it up to the screen. It'll take you right to the online scheduler. When you get there, make an appointment. When you tell the front desk, when you make an appointment to see the office, if you've watched this workshop, whether it be live or whether someone sees it in the future, okay, my gift to you by looking at this workshop is to have your children checked at my expense. I do it when I do workshops, when I share my time with people and I try and educate them. I want to motivate you to do something well for you to change your lives. And in this case, change your children's lives. Let's get them checked. If they are over the age of 10 years old, we will x-ray them. I just signed the paperwork today to bring some new diagnostic equipment into the office that's going to be measuring the electrical activities of muscles, heart rate variability, which is linked to so many different dysfunction, diseases, and stresses in the body, thermography. I'm so excited. You're going to hear more about it. Pay attention, listen for more. It was so nice to spending some time for you tonight. Actually went a little bit over. It's because I get chatty, but it's because my passion is to help you educate, learn, and hopefully everybody be healthier. I appreciate you spending some time with me tonight. There's a couple people here right now. Morgan and Taylor, thanks for showing up. I appreciate you chiming in. I look forward to seeing you on your next appointment, but for time's sake, we're getting out.